The aim of our blog is to foster constitutional conversations across the African continent and to give global voice to issues of particular importance to Africa. With this in mind, what do you think South Africa can learn from other countries on the continent? And in turn, what can other countries learn from South Africa?
I'll start with Mozambique. What can we learn? I learned so much from Mozambique. I'd been 11 years in exile in England. Had wonderful friends there. Married, children, PhD, books coming out. And yet in England, I was unhappy even when I was happy. I felt dislocated in exile. I come to Mozambique. Mozambique, even when I was unhappy, I was happy. I'm closer to my country, the people, the energy. It was a very special time just after independence. The Mozambican Revolution, huge transformation. The energy was brilliant. We had people from all over the world coming to work there. And it was for the poor, it was for the dispossessed, it was for transformation and change. And it was exhilarating. And it wasn't sustainable. It wasn't an open society, there wasn't room for opposition. I learned about pluralism, the need for pluralism in Mozambique. Believing, supporting people's power, uniting everybody, the poor, the workers, the peasants, progressive intellectuals, progressive capitalists, in one united force to transform society. It didn't leave space for opposition. Opposition went underground. It got picked up externally. Bitter civil war. Millions of refugees, child soldiers, mines. There's so many people without legs. I lost an arm. I got converted to pluralism, if you like, through that experience, not through reading Karl Popper and the Open Society and its enemies, but through the Mozambican revolutionary experience. But also the importance of connection with communities. They had extraordinary systems of community courts, Sunday courts we call Sunday judges. Sadly, they've dispensed with them in Mozambique. I think they have a huge role to play all over the African continent, all over the world. The role of culture in public life, every single institution, hospital, factory, university, had its cultural groups. They put on plays, they sang, they danced, they moved together. One of the things that I helped to institute at the Constitutional Court was a choir. We had a ceremony to bid farewell to one of the secretaries who had passed away. And people were singing, and I said, why can't we have a permanent choir? And for several years, we had this wonderful choir singing. The secretary, security people, I think one law clerk joined once. I don't think any judges took part. When the Welsh, almost Prime Minister of England, Neil, forgetting his surname now, came to visit the court. He joined in the choir because the Welsh also loved choirs and so on. It was a very Mozambican thing. They had murals in Maputo, beautiful murals celebrating the transformations and change, some done by great artists, others by people. This idea of public art was embedded in my mind through Mozambican experience. So when the Constitutional Court now, the new building is established, even before the new building, the idea of having art in the court, not as an adornment, but art picking up on human dignity, why it matters, diversity of expression, with bringing color, vibrancy, emotion, the unconscious, if you like, into this building of supreme rationality, so that the two echo off each other, bounce off each other, was very strong. Unfortunately, my colleagues went along with it, and so we got these marvelous tapestries from Marlene Dumas and Willie Bester and other tapestries. We got paintings donated. We got a tapestry done by Joseph and Clover, the very first thing that we had. Wood panels by Cecil Scottness, working with Hamilton Badaza, giving a sense of texture to the building. And when it came to the final building on Constitution Hill, we invited artists to send in designs for the carpets, for the chandeliers, for the doors, all the fabric of the building, not just a beautiful building, bring in decorators to make it look pretty, but the artwork becoming part of the texture of the building, giving it a special kind of a feeling. I wouldn't say we became smarter as judges. I wouldn't say one can draw a distinction between the judgments that came out from the old building and the new building, but I would say the ambience created by the building itself, by the artwork, furthers this notion of getting away from technical formalism and centering your thinking on real people, real experiences, real lives, wrapping your reasoning around that or embedding your reasoning in that. I think all of that is reinforced by the ambience of the building. Years later, I'm invited to Kenya to be on the Judges and Magistrates Vetting Board. Well, that was something. Normally you fight for the independence of judges not to be sacked. We were brought in, 3 Commonwealth judges with 3 Kenyan lawyers and 3 Kenyan non-lawyers, to sack the judges if it's shown that they were corrupt, if it's shown they twisted the law to protect the ruling elite, twisted it in abominable ways. It was very difficult, very brave, very courageous. But the outcome has been the Kenyan judiciary today is producing brilliant judgments. There's great controversy, but people now believe in the courts in a way that they didn't do before. It's a marvelous example. William Matunga played a spectacular role. He'd been in jail, unjustly imprisoned himself by the elite regime. He'd seen the way law could be manipulated and abused, and he set a marvelous personal example of belief in the law, of getting rid of all the trappings, the formalism, the pomposity, the arrogance, the hauteur, and replacing it with a sense of communication, of openness, of writing, of style, of judicial marches they had in the different rural areas, and so on, ways of connecting up with the people. So it's another very different, very brilliant African example.
Good. Perhaps, Judge Sachs, turning to your own personal journey and experience more, your life has, of course, been remarkably rich in its variety and intensity, I think, of the full spectrum of human emotions and experiences. And you've touched on some of these already, from your fighting against the apartheid regime, fighting the profound loneliness of solitary confinement, to the insecurity of a life in exile, the trauma of the car bomb in Mozambique and that's impact on you, to of course the tremendous successes of your role in contributing to securing constitutional democracy in South Africa and 15 years on the bench at the Constitutional Court. And then of course the personal joys of family, friendships, of art, as you've spoken about, of music. And what I find so consistent and so compelling throughout is your idealism as a source of inspiration, but also courage for action. And I'm wondering, what is it that's kept you always hopeful, even in the most difficult of experiences? What is it that's carried you through?
The idealism was absolutely central. The belief in the possibilities of humanity, that struggle makes a difference. But it wasn't just pure idealism. It was an energy, it was fun. And I've spent a lot of time in recent years telling people in the human rights circles and communities, why are your faces so long? Why is struggling for human rights such a serious, doer business? You won't last. We had joy all the way through. it wasn't only joy. We had terrible pain. We lived with dread non-stop. In some ways, our lives became very straitjacketed and narrow to maintain that solidarity. But there was interaction. For me, as a white South African, becoming involved in a movement overwhelmingly black was liberating. Not just the idea of liberation, liberating me from a tight white skin, enabling me to start to move, to sing in public, to use my body to express myself in ways that I hadn't done before. And feeling, I still remember as a young advocate, and I would have crowds of people would come from the townships to hear and understand the issues we were going to debate in court. And feeling, we didn't use the word Ubuntu then, but experiencing it before I even knew the term. The solidarity, the thoughtfulness, that sense of community, so different from, I don't know, I enjoyed school, I had a lot of fun at school, but we were smart ass and clever and individualistic and competitive, a very different kind of a thing. So it was enriching and valuable in itself as a human experience. All of these things became part and parcel of me and introduced a natural elixir, if you like, a vitality. I think every one of the judges had something of that elixir. I don't think when they went to their JSC interviews, any of them were ever asked about it. Sometimes it's called like an X factor, but an X factor sounds like a potion you put into a mix. It's not that, it's something kind of internal. And in our different ways, with our different life experiences, I think we all had it. I had it in a melodramatic way, if you like, but I don't think it was different from that quality that my colleagues on the bench had.
Turning this idealism of yours, that's really been a key driving force in your life and your career, turning that idealism to the country and the continent, where do you think the key struggle lies for young South Africans today, for young Africans across the continent?
Well, if I were to offer a kind of a saying, I don't quite know what it means, but I like it, and I made it, and I use it quite often. To legal people, I'd say we must always be skeptical of law's pretensions, the pomposity, the sense of authority, the righteousness of it, but we must never be cynical of law's possibilities. And it's that tension between, if you like, perfectibility, possibilities, and corruptibility that we've got to learn to manage. So it's not all saying, "Why, oh, wonderful world, we're living in a wonderful world," and just being bland. Terrible things are happening. There's a lot of cruelty, a lot of injustice, a lot of unfairness that we have to combat and deal with, often very, very firmly. But never lose that core optimism in human possibilities and optimism in terms of what the law can do. And for me, it's been absolutely self-fulfilling to see what our court has accomplished and the difference it's made. Sometimes it's spectacular. Access to antiretrovirals saved South Africa. We were heading for catastrophe. The virus now destroying everything we'd gained through transformation and change. Access to antiretrovirals. We now have the biggest antiretroviral program in the world. The court played a vital role. Why? Because it was invoked by Treatment Action Campaign, people on the ground, and people in civil society campaigning and ultimately getting support in government. That's just one kind of brilliant example. And there are many other examples where there are hundreds and hundreds of thousands, millions of South Africans leading happier lives, better lives, more dignified lives because of what the court has done, setting the norms and standards for our society. I think all of Africa can benefit in that way. I think we hugely ignorant of most of the rest of Africa. I think South Africans have an enormous amount to gain from living, experiencing, learning from other countries. My 11 years in Mozambique were immensely enriching for me in all sorts of ways, very, very profoundly. My experience in Kenya, Nairobi, I could think of 5 reasons why I had to hate that city, but I loved it. The energy, the vitality, the spark of the people, the vigor of the debates and so on. Egypt in Tahrir Square after the revolution, the ebullience of what's felt there. Dakar, a city completely different in style, in background, in feel, and now we have the magnificent curator, Koyo, head of the director of a great modern art museum in Cape Town, teaching us lessons about African art, about world art. There's so much to gain, so much to learn, and we owe so much as well to the people who saved my life, to the Mozambicans who died because of our struggle for freedom in South Africa, to the people of Botswana who died, people in Lesotho who died because of our struggle for freedom. Huge investment in liberation in South Africa. We need a much more dignified, much more proactive relationship with our neighbors and with the whole continent.